Uneasy Homecoming, a story of fear and courage. Connie's heart raced with anticipation as she returned home after a peaceful 2 week holiday. As the taxi rolled through the fading light of the day, everything around her seemed familiar, yet something deep inside her stirred uneasily. Her house stood on the edge of a quiet bay, isolated from the bustle of the town. It looked as neat and welcoming as ever, but a strange dread wrapped itself around her, tightening its grip as she stepped out of the taxi. The unease persisted as she entered the quiet house. It was the kind of silence that felt unnatural, almost oppressive, as though the house itself was holding its breath. Connie dismissed it, attributing her anxiety to the fact that she was alone and that Tom, her husband, wouldn't be home until midnight. Yet, a gnawing sensation told her that something wasn't right. She wandered into the kitchen, trying to shake off the strange feelings by going about familiar routines. The hum of the refrigerator and the sound of water running from the tap offered some comfort, but it wasn't enough to dispel her fear. The house, though familiar, felt strange, as if it had been disturbed in her absence. Connie's gaze drifted outside to the garden, where the last light of dusk cast a soft glow over the bay. Everything appeared calm and serene, but there was a tension in the air. As she stood in the garden, she noticed a movement by the garage, something subtle, something she might have ignored on any other day. And yet, her instincts sharpened. She moved closer to the house, her unease growing. Back inside, Connie tried to calm herself by calling her neighbor, Mrs. Winston, for some company and reassurance. But instead of comfort, Mrs. Winston's news sent a chill through her. There had been a string of burglaries in the neighborhood while she was away. People's homes had been ransacked, and an elderly man had been viciously attacked when he stumbled upon the criminals. Connie's pulse quickened as the realization settled in. Her house had been empty, vulnerable, the perfect target. A flicker of fear turned into a wave of terror as Connie recalled the subtle signs, the broken window, the feeling of being watched, the back door that wasn't fully closed. It all fell into place. Someone had been using her house, hiding in the shadows, and she was no longer alone. Desperate to remain calm, she made her way upstairs, determined to face her fear. As she entered the bedroom, her breath caught in her throat. There, on the floor, was a bag filled with stolen goods, cameras, jewelry, watches, the loot from the burglaries Mrs. Winston had mentioned. Her home had become a hideout for criminals, and now, they would know she had discovered their secret. Suddenly, she heard the faint creak of the stairs. Someone was inside the house, moving deliberately, searching for her. Her heart pounded as she realized the intruder wasn't just a burglar, he was someone who knew he had to silence her before she could call for help. Connie's survival instincts kicked in. Silently, she slipped out of her slippers and crept downstairs, her stockinged feet moving noiselessly over the floor. She knew she had to act fast. The front door was locked, and she couldn't risk making a sound by unlocking it. She darted into the night, her heart racing as she fled through the dark garden. Then, she saw it, the motorcycle hidden near the garage, the vehicle of the man who was now hunting her. A wild idea sparked in her mind. She couldn't drive the motorcycle, but she could use it for something else. Quickly, she found the fuel valve and opened it. The smell of gasoline filled the air as she fumbled for the box of matches in her pocket. With trembling hands, she struck a match and dropped it onto the leaking fuel. Flames erupted instantly, climbing hungrily into the night sky. Connie retreated into the shadows, her breath coming in short gasps as the fire blazed brighter and higher. The intruder burst from the house, his silhouette outlined against the roaring flames. In his frantic attempt to put out the fire, he realized too late that his escape was gone. The fire would attract attention, neighbors, firefighters, police. And with the loot still inside the house, there was no way he could explain his presence. Connie wept silently, overwhelmed by a mix of relief and terror. The nightmare was over, but the fear that had gripped her throughout the night still clung to her. The distant wail of sirens grew louder as help finally arrived. In the glow of the flames, Connie stood in the safety of the night, knowing she had faced her fear and emerged stronger. The lights from the approaching cars pierced the darkness, and as the fire engines pulled up to her burning home, Connie realized that the man who had terrorized her was finished. He could no longer harm anyone. And though her home was lost, she had won a greater victory, overcoming the fear that had tried to consume her. She had saved herself by trusting her instincts and refusing to be a victim. The fire that burned away the evidence of the crime had also burned away her doubt. Connie had come home to a nightmare, but in the end, she found her strength. The night air was cool and sweet, and for the first time since she arrived, Connie felt a sense of peace.